Hey everyone, Scott here to discuss Echo, starring Alakwa Cox, Chasky Spencer, Graham Greene, Tantu Cardinal, Devry Jacobs, Zon McLaren, Vincent D'Onofrio, and Charlie Cox, directed by Catriona McKenzie and Sidney Freeland. Now, I don't know much about this character other than what we saw from that Hawkeye TV series and Kingpin from that show, as well as the Daredevil Netflix series, which recently became in the part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, is here as well. And is it going to be as good, or worth it after Hawkeye? Well, I don't know too much about the character, and I kind of wanted to keep it that way after Hawkeye until this show came, because I don't think anybody wanted it right off the bat. But let's just get into it and see how much we want it. Maya Lopez, returned by Alakwa Cox from Hawkeye, is born back in the day as her ally is a woodpecker. And suddenly her home collapses and goes outside along with her family, whom she saved. And I was very confused during this opening, as well as her origin as a little girl, along with her cousin Bonnie, who's probably around her age. And we get a campfire with her family, like with her grandmother Chula, played by Tantu Cardinal from the recent Scorsese movie Killers of the Flower Moon, and her father William as her parents go home and get ran over by a truck. And this opening sequence really confused me. At one point I couldn't tell if Maya and Bonnie were cousins or sisters, so that bothered me, and I couldn't tell who was who. While this isn't Alakwa Cox's fault, because she is deaf and disabled in real life, I will give her props for that. But when she spoke, the sign language went a little too fast for me, and it annoyed me for half the show. After their death, Henry Black Crow Lopez, played by Chasky Spencer, sends William to New York for work purposes, and she grows up and becomes the violent menace she was after her father was killed and mentored by Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, returned by Vincent D'Onofrio from the Hawkeye show and the Daredevil Netflix series. And Hawkeye, and did we need these flashbacks for the show at the beginning for at least 30 minutes? Yes, for reasons, and that's because if you've seen Hawkeye and do not remember it, then, or haven't, that's a way to catch up. And same goes if you haven't seen that show, Hawkeye, and now caught up with this, you're going to get lost. She goes with Fisk's men to beat up on people until the Daredevil, returned by Charlie Cox from a brief cameo in Spider-Man No Way Home and the Daredevil Netflix series, fights with Maya and beats up a couple of Fisk's men. And this fight sequence looked bad. And I do like seeing Vincent D'Onofrio back as the Kingpin for a few episodes, 4 to be exact, like he did in a couple of episodes of Hawkeye. But like I said in Hawkeye, I could watch him in a better role in the Daredevil Netflix series, but I don't like him in this, nor do I like Maya in this show, as she's very one note, and this first 30 minutes of this first episode is just all flashbacks from when she was a kid to where we've seen her before, so it's a recap. And did we need to see what happened in Hawkeye all over again? Not for some of the beginning, as it takes too long. This took like 30 minutes. You got to give me a break on this, because it's too long. But we need to see what happened between her and the Kingpin, but it took almost 30 minutes to explain that. Doesn't make any sense to me. 20 years pass, and 5 months later, we currently pick up Maya, wounded on her way back to her hometown in Oklahoma, as on a motorcycle, as she stops by the old house to sleep at, as the next morning comes and finds her cousin Biscuits, played by Cody Lightning, and his precious doggy, and Maya goes around town and briefly sees Bonnie as a firefighter, while his Uncle Henry owns a bowling alley, and his assistant, Victor Vicky Tyson, seems like an asshole. And remember, this is not a PG-13 rated show, as the rating on this is TVMA, which means it's an R-rated Marvel show. Maya wants to ask Henry about getting something to burn down, and Fisk's shipping building in her hometown, and Henry won't help her out because he doesn't want to bring war to the people in his family while Fisk is recovering. And I'm going to be blunt here. I don't like the characters in the show, which is a step down for Maya and the Kingpin after Hawkeye. And this show I didn't need for this retrospective series, but this is in the MCU. I don't have a choice because it's a mini series, but to review the show for the show, but this is too much of a downer. I don't do TV shows in general. I just do mini series and movies. Anything that's over an hour, I will do that. In 1200 AD, someone who is supposed Loak to be Loak plays a native sport with one team looking red and one team looking blue, as the blue team brings out their toughest teammate to the game, and eventually Loak is pissed at the blue team for scoring bigger and bigger, and they're cheating, while Loak does get the ball and wins the game. And does this make sense? Absolutely not, as I don't get the point of this flashback. Maya gives Biscuits a shopping list, like going to the pawn shop that Scully, played by Graham Greene, owns, and helps him out with a couple of customers, and gets some stuff for Maya and comes back with it, which is a painfully acted scene, while Chula visits Henry about Maya's return, and she hopes Bonnie doesn't know about Maya's return. And the cinematography looked pretty bad in this show, and it's a shame. And I don't like the character Tantu Cardinal is playing, because I liked her better in Killers of the Flower Moon than I did in this show. Score one for Scorsese, I guess. Sorry, Marvel fans. Maya hops on a train while Biscuits follows her, and the way she was moving, the CGI looked bad. And like the Wolverine made it look better than this pile of crap, as she spots something else trying to rob the train. I didn't get it myself, while Chula calls Biscuits while he's on a mission for Maya, as she blows up the shippings that is coming to Fisk, and I got frustrated by the bad-looking special effects on this show. As Maya jumps on Biscuit's truck before the train went in a tunnel, which was a bad stunt work, and that's how irritating the show is, in my opinion. The train gets to New York, and as the crew opens it, the factory blows up and kills everyone except for a couple of guys. Meanwhile, Henry cowers to tell people Maya might have something to do with it, while Maya goes to Scully to talk and to get a new leg, and Henry has a talk with Maya about how Fisk will have an army with him, as she tries the new leg out and sees a statue of Choctaw? I don't know if I'm saying that right, please forgive me, which is Maya's ancestor. And do I care for the dialogue, how it's written? Not by a long shot, as Killers of the Flower Moon had a better plot about Native Americans than this show, in my opinion. Biscuits talks with Bonnie and says something about Maya being in town after the truck incident, as he should have not said a damn thing about Maya, as the story is terribly told. And Henry goes to Maya, having a conversation about a war coming to her and how people will die. And Bonnie texts Maya about being in town, and she doesn't respond. And what kind of a sister or cousin or whatever the hell they are is that? And I just don't care at this point. We start the next episode in the 1600s, like it was a silent movie about how the ancestors got their echo powers back then, and the artist makes it look so much better than how this show portrays it. Chula goes to the pawn shop to talk with Scully about Maya being back in town, and how she's bringing trouble back home with her, involving her family into her trouble. And Chula prepares for war against her granddaughter, and Maya is kidnapped by Vicky and gets to Henry's roller skating place, while Henry is a hostage, with Maya and Vicky called someone to get his reward money, while Bonnie comes by the roller skating place to see if Henry is available, but he makes up an excuse about tax lawyers, and he warns her to get out, and as she walks out, she gets captured and trapped with Maya, and while Vicky and a couple of ladies wait for the kingpin, they're too stupid to leave them alone, cutting them herself and Bonnie out as their spy on one of the ladies. And this scene is very frustrating, as they talk about the past and eventually find a way to escape, which doesn't work out, as she gets an idea while they take Bonnie out of there. And the people getting Maya come by whom? I'm guessing is Kingpin's assassins, excuse me, I meant assassins. and they come by with no money, and it's a promise that it's broken by the kingpin, and Maya gets away out of captivity. And this action is, I swear to God, hard to follow, and Vicky gets killed by the kingpin's assassins, while both of the ladies get killed by Maya, and they let her go as well as her family go. And Henry tells Maya there's a price for her head, and Scully gives Maya her new leg. And when Maya gets home, Fisk shows up at her door and wants to make truce with Maya. And is any of this believable? Hell no. Because this is the point I can't believe this show exists. We flash back to when Maya was a little girl, and Fisk picks her up after school, and an ice cream man insults her and sends her away, and Fisk beats up on the ice cream man, and as Maya gets a little piece of him after seeing what she saw. And this is the kingpin I missed on Hawkeye, as it's only in that scene, which is a shameful choice. And I missed the ruthless kingpin of crime that was in the Daredevil Netflix series. Back to present day, excuse me, Fisk wants to talk with Maya with the tiny communicator and have their Sunday night dinners like they used to, when the day is actually Thursday in that scene. And they sit down and have their dinner together, and she pours the wine in the drain, and she asks repeatedly, why is he here? And I honestly wish I had the communicator for sign and foreign language reasons, as for the life of me, I don't speak any other language besides how I'm talking right now. So I'll give the show credit for that. Fisk has a proposition for Maya to come home in New York with him, and he gives her time to think about it, and he tells Henry to accept his offer. Why he went out of New York to the town he grew up in, while Biscuits controls traffic of the Choctaw Carnival, while they get prepared for it, and Maya had a vision and faints, and Henry takes Maya out to the house of Chula and have a discussion about why she's seeing any of this, and why she gave up on Maya, as she didn't want to see her father inside of her. And I got that at the beginning of the show, as Maya ditches her and decides to walk out of the house, and I didn't believe Tantu Cardinal's acting in that scene, as it comes off horrible, and it's a shame. After Maya leaves and gets out of town, a song comes on that sounds like it doesn't belong in the show, as it was a bad choice made by one of the series directors, while Maya goes to Fisk to kill him at first, but she tells him she doesn't accept his proposition, and how he failed her as a father figure, or uncle, I'll say. And he gives her a hammer he killed his father with, the kingpin, many years ago, and gives Maya the chance to do the same thing, but she doesn't do it, and she comes back to town and thinks about Fisk. And I still don't know why I should care about any of this character at all, as she's a coward for trying to leave town once again. And I didn't care because, again, she's very one frickin' note. We see the woodpecker pecking on a tree until Bonnie shoots it down with her slingshot and shows Maya, and she decides to fix its wing with her echo powers, and it will come back to a point at the end of the show, or this episode, while Chula goes to Scully, for business reasons, and he shows her the sewing machine she got rid of a long time ago, and Chula bumps into Fisk as she gets captured by him while working for the post office, and that's just too convenient for the plot to kick into gear. Maya goes in a diner while Biscuits controls who came in a particular scene in a parking lot section, while Lumberjack parks in the wrong spot like an asshole he is. And Maya gets a message from Biscuits. Has she seen Bonnie or Chula? And she goes back to town while Bonnie gets captured off screen, and she sees through her echo powers Bonnie as she's imagining in the same room with her, and she thinks of Bonnie in a car while she tells her she's not alone and her family is with her. And that's a nice message, but the way it was executed was pretty poor. Maya checks out her new uniform and goes to the parade while the Lumberjack tries to find Maya to kill her for the kingpin, but she sneaks by with the carnival to get in a big tent of some kind, where the woodpecker shows her where they're at, And Henry looks for Maya as she approaches Fisk with Bonnie and Chula held hostage. And while Biscuits finds the lumberjack and Henry shoots at one more lumberjack and sees they're up to no good and stops them by Biscuits stops them by crushing the lumberjack's vehicle. And Maya uses her echo powers along with her ancestors to stop the Kingpin, and she takes him back to when Fisk was a boy and tries to stop him from killing his father all those years ago, like I brought up before. While his father beat up his mother, and he goes back to his airplane, and that wasn't much of a fight like any other Marvel show, as this was completely plain. But it's not as worse as She-Hulk's ending, where she worked everything out with Kevin Feige. And like that, I can't believe where this went by the end of the show, as it had no stakes whatsoever. As Maya comes back for a family barbecue and spends time with her family, and before the show is over, we get to a mid-credits scene. Fisk sees on the TV who will run for mayor of New York, and he thinks about doing it himself, and this climax was plain, other than the setting up a future show where Spider-Man, Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and even Maya will have to fight the mayor of New York, Wilson Fisk, aka the Kingpin, and I can't wait to find out where that'll come from. Now it's time for my rating. I'll give this show a 3.9 out of 10. I don't like the characters, even the return of Vincent D'Onofrio as the Kingpin, but I like seeing him here. Or Alaqua Cox from the Hawkeye series, to Tattooed Cardinal, who had a better performance in Killers of the Flower Moon than she did here, and the special effects looked pretty bad. That hell, even the Wolverine looked better than this pile of crap, as this story was terribly told in my opinion. I don't care for the writing, and the cinematography in the show was dreadful. In a show I don't believe after Hawkeye anyone asked for. So why create it to begin with at all, as the show doesn't make sense. And Maya was very one note like Blade to begin with, as she was bland, and the action comes off very unbelievable, as this show felt like a complete downer. I don't care for the show, as Killers of the Flower Moon, like I said, had a better plot of Native Americans, better than this show does. And the reason I can't recommend this to anyone is because I didn't need this after Hawkeye. Like I brought up before, and it's a shame, I was blunt on this show, but at the same time, this is a skippable. So this is a non-recommendation for this show, as I can't believe this now exists as a TV miniseries. Just like I'm not going to believe Madam Web exists as a movie when that comes out next month. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and I will be back in the summer when Deadpool 3 comes. And until then, Avengers Assemble!